to a SEAL team, when I got a SEAL team for the first time, what guided all my decisions was wanting to be a good SEAL. And what makes a good SEAL is a good SEAL supports his teammates. That's it. Look, I don't care if you're the best shot. I don't care how many pull-ups you can do. I don't care how good of a runner you are. If you don't look out for your teammates, you're not a good SEAL. You won't be wanted in the SEAL platoon, which is crazy to think, right? You can have a guy that's an unbelievable shot, unbelievable diver, really good at parachuting. If he doesn't look out for his teammates, no one wants him. Why is that? Because we all know that if we don't work together as a team, we are going to die. So when you go back, you make that your priority. I'm gonna support my teammates. I'm gonna support this other department. I'm gonna do what it takes to make them win.
Oh, you got the best clips, dude.
Thanks, man.
That's so good.
Applicable, right?
Can I start us off with a quote?
Please do.
So I find a lot of the best wisdom comes from some of these army guys, some of these military guys, because if you lose, you die, which means losing is not an option. So you must figure out how do we win, and so the stakes are literally as high as they could ever be. So then it purifies you, it refines your thinking, right? You got no time for any of this kind of wishy-washy stuff. Yep. Here's a quote from an army general. 4 brave men who do not know each other will not dare to attack a lion. But 4 less brave men who know each other, who are sure of their reliability and consequently of their mutual help, will attack resolutely. And this is the science of the organization of armies in a nutshell.
Wow.
Isn't that great?
That's profound.
Isn't that great? If you can count on your brother next to you, that is so much better than you being the best shot. Because if you're going up against a lion, that's not happening 1v1. You must count on your brother next to you not to retreat.
Yeah, that is so good.
Yeah.
That's profound. Can you send that quote to me after?
Yeah, I will.
That is really good.
Yeah.
No, that's really good. I want to ask you the question. What are the damages of comparison that you can see in Christian culture, but also just in relationships? What would you say are some of the damages of comparison? I have some thoughts and some answers, but I would love for you to just share about that quick. That'd be great.
The first murder in the Bible comes from the first brothers.
Yeah.
Cain and Abel. What is the inspiration behind the first murder? It's this dark, jealous, bitter resentfulness. That because God shined on him and he's got bigger muscles, he's got a smaller forehead. I'm looking at Tamagi right now.
A smaller forehead.
Podcast. I'm looking at Tamagi right now. I'm going, man, his triceps are popping out of this shirt right now.
It's because I wear children's shirts. That's why.
He looks fantastic. No, but what's the story of the first brothers?
Yeah.
It's these 2 brothers who God seems to smile at one and seems to not explain why he doesn't smile at the other one. He accepts the offering of one. He doesn't accept the offering of the other. And what happens? The other brother gets so bitter, so dark, so resentful that he kills his own brother. That is the story of mankind. You know, it's one thing, Adam and Eve, they're born without belly buttons. They live in this paradisal, garden. But the first real people, they kill each other out of resentfulness. Because he compares himself to his brother. He goes, my brother's got something that I don't got. God smiles at my brother. He didn't smile at me. Life is unfair. The universe was set up in a way that isn't just. And so I will kill my brother to make it just. It's sad, man, but that tendency is in all of our hearts. I don't think enough pastors are talking about the implication of resentfulness. Resentfulness is the darkness. It is the poison. It is the thing that causes us to lash out at each other. Paul the Apostle says, why do you wage war against each other? Is it not because of the lust of your own flesh? That connection isn't obvious in the beginning. You're like, why would lust have to do with why we lash out at each other? I get it. It's because I look at my brother and I think to myself, if only I had what he's got. It's not fair. Why was he born into a richer family? Why was he born taller than me? Why was he born with a better metabolism than me? Why was he born with this, and this? And we think to ourselves, God, if you were actually just, you would make it so that none of that was the case. And so we get this resentfulness, bitterness, that darkness in our hearts. I think that is where much, if not all, of the division in church comes from. To be honest, what has your experience been with that?
Oh man, I have stories for days on this. I want to hear your personal experiences too.
Sure.
If you have some,
Sure.
We don't have to be specific on names and stuff, but I would say that, man, pastors and leaders are some of the most insecure people out there.
Wow.
By far.
Wow.
Because
Why do you say that?
Because leaders, and this is my experience with leaders and pastors. I'm not, for any pastors, my friends listening out there, this is not you in particular. There's just a lot of pastors out there that are insecure, and the reason for that, I think, is when you are a leader or a pastor, you're somebody that is meant to have it maybe all together, somebody who has all the answers. And actually, a lot of pastors are men, and if we don't, if we're honest, there's a lot of like really alpha language that we kind of talk in as men, right? Like when there's a group of men in the room, it's really easy to be friendly, but deep down, I think most guys are like, hey, am I a better leader than this guy? Am I a better speaker than this guy? Am I stronger than this guy in this area? And this is kind of how men work. Like we kind of, like Peterson said, if you get a group of guys into a room together and there's like a common task or whatever it is, like the men kind of just size one another up, and whoever's the most competent, whoever's the best at, and the most able, then they step up and lead, the rest follow suit. It's kind of how men work. We're like, who's the best at this? Okay, let's follow that person. Let's do it, right? Let's cut to the chase here. So I think a lot of male pastors, and I'm sure female pastors too, struggle with comparison. They struggle with comparing themselves to one another. Like look at social media right now. You can see some of the greatest preachers ever all over social media, and it's you can do two things. You can either celebrate what's on their life and be excited for what God's doing through them, or you can compare yourself to them and constantly feel like you're falling short. And so, I've been in a lot of situations where people are comparing themselves to me. I'm fairly intuitive, I would say. And so I read people. And so I've had, I can go up to a pastor, and if they're confident in themselves and they love me, I love them, I can feel it. There's this common, it's almost like their demeanor and their persona. You look at them and it's just like, hey, what's going on? It's nothing but love and kindness. But then there's other pastors you walk up to or other people, and their body language changes towards you. Like they're trying to be kind, but their body language is saying they don't want to be around you. And then, you kind of ask yourself why, what's kind of going on. And this next segment that I'm going to share about maybe is going to make me seem like I'm a bit self-absorbed. But Austin and I, like if we're being totally honest, we're not bad-looking young men who are capable.
Stop it, Chris.
No, but it's just a truth. We're not bad-looking young men who are capable at what we're doing. But I've had throughout my life, different guys compare themselves to me. I've definitely compared myself to other guys, so it's something we'll struggle with. But I've been on the receiving end of that lots, where I can notice when people are comparing themselves to me, man. And so are we gonna ask something?
Well, that's a real issue, brother.
Yeah.
That's a real issue. Yeah, keep going.
I was just going to say, I remember being at this, I'm quarter Japanese, so I was at this Japanese reunion in BC, in the shoe swap. And I remember all my Asian cousins were there, like the ones I knew and didn't know. So I had second, third, fourth, removed cousins. Everyone was there. But
I was there.
You were there?
Yeah, I remember that.
You kind of look Japanese if you think about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
I get that a lot, actually.
You do.
Yeah.
Your eyes are kind of, they're kind.
Okay,
you have kind eyes. You have kind eyes. A little squintier. Really nice. Our filmer,
we're using
Joshua,
this clip
is
on the Citadel Church Instagram officially. We're gonna put this on our website.
I love that. Our amazing filmer, Joshua Lee. Very thankful for him and all his help. He is actually Asian. I'm only kind of Asian, so. He kind of gives me the Asian card. He gives me like the hey, you can be a part of the club card. So, anyways, I went to this reunion with all my Asian cousins, and Austin's just dying here. I can't be serious right now.
Go ahead.
Okay, we're good. Anyways, I remember going to this reunion. All my cousins are there, and I remember getting in like 3 fights for in 2 days. It was like 2 days, and I got 3 altercations with my cousins.
And you're a big boy.
I'm not a small boy.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a big boy. And I was just, so I would, I was with my cousins. We'd be playing tag. The boys would start roughhousing. I could roughhouse a little more. I wasn't trying to be mean, but all of a sudden I'm in a fist fight with one of my bigger cousins. And the thing is, when I was younger, I was a bit bigger, but also like I had anger issues. So when I'd throw down, like I would throw down. Like it wasn't. There was no like, if I was in an altercation, like I wanted to finish the guy. It wasn't like it was like a kind of a blackout thing. And but I remember just getting all these fights, and it was like my first exposure, I guess, to comparison, because I was the bigger and stronger cousin, and there was other cousins who were big, but they wanted to fight me, and I didn't, and I never knew why. And even in school, like they can talk to my mom, like throughout middle school, like I got in a lot of fights, and it was always these like smaller guys who were insecure probably about themselves who would come up and pick fights with me. And I'm not kidding. I wouldn't be doing anything. I'd be just being myself, and they would want to start fights with me. They'd want to try to start beef with me. Sure. They would, poke me, punch me, maybe push me around, and all of a sudden I would snap and I'd clock them, and I'd be in trouble. And so I'm not trying to make myself sound like this alpha guy, because I'm really not, and I don't care about that. But it's like, it's just something that we all deal with. And I think either you're on the receiving end of people comparing themselves to you, or you're comparing yourselves to others. And that's just something that's very normal. And so
it's something that competent people deal with that is very difficult to address. And I appreciate you having the tact to address it in a way that's relatable, because that is something that is hard to talk about. Yeah. Because it's so difficult to say, I'm just so great. I excel in this one hierarchy of competence, and there is a price to be paid for being at the top of any given kind of little social pyramid, right? For sure. Whether it's you're the best guy at this, you got this talent, right? You're the best speaker, you're the best this or whatever. Then all of a sudden people go, I was just thinking about this right before we filmed this podcast. I was going, you know what? People become significantly less charitable as you go up that social hierarchy. Yeah. Which means
they're not aware of it either.
No, and which means you have a lot less room for error, which is, again, why Paul says to young Pastor Timothy, just stay blameless. Like, don't give anyone any excuse to say anything against you, because they will. Because even in James it says, let not many of you become teachers, because you will be under a greater condemnation. And so there is this sense in which people look at a guy that's got something going for him, like yourself, and you go, who does that guy think he is? And I've experienced that, bro. I've experienced that, as you say, on both ends. And that's a difficult problem to address. But I'll tell you this, there was a pivotal moment, and you probably remember this as well as I do. There was a pivotal moment in our friendship where I met you, and I was like, this guy's cool. I like this guy. But there was a part of me that went, who's this guy? Who's this guy? Who's this guy? I wanted to poke you a little bit. I wanted to poke you a little bit. So interesting that just instantly my nature kicks in. I'm like, this guy's better looking than me. This guy's got bigger muscles than me. This guy's more charismatic than me. And I go, all right, let's go see what this guy's made
I think we're equally charismatic. I might be a little bit bigger, but everything else, else is relatively the same.
Anyway, So what happens? Is we get together, and I got this ministry, and you got this ministry. You're planning a church. I got a young adults group, and we're going, okay, maybe we should consider bringing these ministries together, merging them, and all of a sudden now we work together, right? Yeah. And I remember this moment where you said to me, "Yeah, but Austin, you're kind of a leader type of guy. Wouldn't you want to lead your own thing? Wouldn't you not want to have anybody above you?" And I think this was the key moment in our friendship where I went, you know what? The opposite is true. The opposite is true. Because at the end of the day, if somebody is a better leader than me, this is a meritocracy. And if you are a better leader than me, then I will gladly call you lead pastor. I will gladly submit to you and trust your wisdom, because at the end of the day, this is about building the kingdom in the most effective way possible. And I'm not going to stand up here and go, nah, because of my ego and insecurity, because of this comparison of myself, I'm going to go, no, I'm not going to let Chris lead me. Who does he think he is? Ba 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 ba.
Right.
No, man, it's about the kingdom. All of that has got to die.
Has to die.
And that all those selfish desires in me, all that comparison has got to die. And I got to go, you know what? Whatever is best for the kingdom, that's what we're going to do. And I'm glad I did
really
that because we, I don't know if you remember this, but we literally swore an oath to each other. I'm not
I
going
do remember that.
I'm not
Black
going to
Tiger
swear
Coffee.
oath. But I swore an oath to you. I said
Yeah.
that the enemy will use comparison to get in between us.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
inevitably people are going to go, I like it when Chris speaks. I like it when Austin speaks.
Yeah.
Oh, I like going for coffee with Chris. Well, I like going for coffee with Austin.
Yeah.
And then,
And funny enough, we've had these situations where people, I like Austin more in this way, or I like Chris more in this way.
it's
Yeah.
always going to happen. It's always going to
Yeah, it's
happen.
ridiculous, dude.
and I said that is the way that the
Yeah.
devil will shut down this ministry. Is if we start to compare ourselves to each other, we become this dark part of our hearts takes over, and we get insecure and bitter and resentful. We go, wow, why does he get to do that? Why do people like him? Why do people? And then all of a sudden, boom, the enemy has taken over. There's division, and we are not doing anything for the kingdom.
Yeah.
So that's why we swore an oath to each other. I said, I will never, ever, ever allow resentfulness because of comparison to sneak into my heart, because that is a tool of the enemy that he will use to bring us apart and make both of us less effective. It will never happen.
Yeah. Man, no, I appreciate that. I think it's, I haven't thought about those conversations we had at first for a long time, and those are some really, really important conversations we had because, like we're not that different in age either, and I wouldn't say either that we're that different in like our abilities either. We're very similar in a lot of our abilities, and you are actually an incredible leader. Just so you know,
Thanks, man.
you're actually an amazing leader that I really respect and admire. And so for me too, it's. I feel very honored by you saying that, but at the same time, like it is so good for me to be around you because you're somebody that sharpens me. It's iron sharpens iron. But I think a lot of people struggle with being around people that are great. But for me, I'm like, I want to surround myself with people that are further along in different areas than me, that challenge me, that are close to me, they're better in different areas than me because I want to become better. And for me, I'm like, ultimately, I'm like, it's for the kingdom of God. It's for His glory. And so if us being on the same team means Jesus is glorified more, that I'm sharpened more as a leader, that I get a brother and a friend out of this, I'm like, man, I would love that. And I'm honored by the words you said, so I really do appreciate that, man. But I really respect you and all your giftings, man. So it's been great.
How do you combat other people feeling jealous of you? This is a tough question to answer.
Ooh.
But how would you combat that? What would your tips be to somebody who is perhaps further along in life, whether they've got a successful business, or maybe they're very attractive along a certain domain, or maybe they have progressed, and all of a sudden they start to notice people aren't the same around them anymore. There's a little bit of a different vibe, and every once in a while, people go a little bit nuts, and people get because that resentfulness causes people to literally go crazy. There's craziness, there's insanity in that darkness, and so what would your recommendation to people be who are leaders in their given domain to never allow for resentfulness to sneak in? Because you've done a great job with me. So how do you combat that?
Oh man. And you've also done that great with me too, because I think you have a lot of great speaking abilities. You sing. Austin sings like an angel. He'll sing on here one time for you. So I have also had to really been like, man, like Austin is great in these areas, and I need to celebrate him, right? So I'll get into that because I want to talk about, I think, answer your question about how we combat resentfulness, but then also I think talk about how we deal with when we feel jealous of somebody else as well, like kind of both ends. But to answer your question. I think there's a few levels to it. And I think the first one is like acknowledging that it's not your responsibility to make people feel comfortable around you. I remember this guy speaking to in time. He was a friend visiting from ministry school, but like very anointed guy, loves the Lord, loves the word, very strong leader. And he spoke to me and he said, man, I've been analyzing you a bit with people. Like we would have this conversation, let's say like at level 10, where we're talking about God, we're talking about strategy, we're talking about leadership. Like we're like really vibing on a high level. Like I don't know if you've ever been around a person where you can just like, they get you. Like I think we have that with one another where we get one another, the way we talk, the way we think, and it's like at another level. But then he's like, you really bring yourself down around other people to make them more comfortable with you.
Yes.
And
Like a tall guy who hunches over.
yeah, hunches over,
Yeah,
tries
yeah,
to come
yeah.
to your level,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
there's even this psychological thing called mirroring, where like in a conversation to make you feel more comfortable, I would actually mirror what you're doing. So I'd cross my leg, put my hands like this, because I want to make you feel comfortable. And so I think a few things is just like, yeah, you gotta not be a people pleaser. You can't care what people think. It's not your responsibility to make everyone like you. So that needs to die. But I think another really important thing is just making yourself as humble as possible, I think, as well. Like really trying to recognize if somebody is struggling with that, like you don't owe them that you shrink, but you can be humble and try to have some humility and have compassion for them. Because I think as a pastor and a leader in the church, like you don't want some of your congregation to get jealous and then leave. You want to be able to kind of correct them, but to show them that, hey, I'm just like you. I'm human. Like I'm approachable. But yeah, I'm good at these areas. I have some competition for the Lord. So I think it's just really critical that, yeah, I guess to realize it's not your responsibility to make you like them, to make them not jealous of you, but to try to be as humble as possible while remaining confident, if that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
How do I balance everything you just said with, in 1 Corinthians 9 and 10, Paul says, to the weak, I am weak. I am all things to all people, and I seek to please all men so that I might win them for Christ.
Right.
So yes, I understand the benefit of saying I'm not a people pleaser. I'm not bending over backwards, changing myself. I'm not a chameleon. But Paul seems to say, hey man, if anything is going to prevent you from being effective in influencing other people, just get rid of it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
So how do you balance those two? What do you think about that?
No, it's good. I think I think it's kind of like in my mind, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like two separate conversations. Because if someone's jealous of me, like there's like if it's my personality, if it's just like, hey, Chris, you're confident and you're a great leader, and that makes me insecure. It's like, well, I can't stop being confident because that's something that God's given me. I can't stop being a great leader because that's something that God's given me. But I think if it's something I'm doing that. Like I think what Paul is trying to address there is things that we are doing that we can give that's not intrinsically us. It's not part of our personality.
Okay. Right.
That's what I kind of believe. It's like if let's say Josh, he loves fishing, and I'm trying to evangelize to him. Like, okay, I'm gonna pick up some fishing. Like I'm gonna go fishing, not because I like it or I'm good at it, because I want to win you to Christ, right? Like that adopting maybe lifestyles. But I think I would just separate the two between your personality and who you are and what you do in effectiveness to reach people for Christ, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So same question to you. How do you balance, how do you react to people that are jealous of you? How do you like keep yourself from lowering yourself too much? And how do you deal with people who are jealous with you? And let's just clarify, there's not thousands of people that are jealous of me in Austin, but I think everyone out there has experienced people who have been jealous of them at some point, right? So
100%.
Yeah.
Very difficult thing to talk about. At the end of the day, competence is necessary. Competence is necessary.
Yeah.
One of the requirements for eldership, for example, for what we do, you have to be able to teach, it says in Titus and in 1 Timothy. You have to have a certain degree of competence. You have to lead well.
Yeah.
That's why it says, look to see if a man leads his family well. If he leads his family well, then he'll lead the church well. That's one of the requirements for becoming a pastor. So, okay, fair enough. At the same time, competence is polarizing. Competence is polarizing. Masculinity is polarizing.
Yeah.
So people are going to either go, I love this guy, I'm behind this guy, I'm going to submit to this guy, I think he's a great leader, and I'm jumping on his train.
Let's go. Yeah.
Or you let a little bit of darkness sneak into your heart and you go, well, he's not actually that great.
Right,
He thinks he's great, but he's not actually. If it was me, he thinks he's so smart. But if it was me in that position, I would do things differently. If only I was in charge. And you start to talk like this to yourself, and you ruminate, and all of a sudden now there's deep, dark resentfulness that takes you in some crazy directions.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
But the competence remains necessary. So at the end of the day, are you going to lose the few to bless the mass?
Yeah.
Or are you going to ignore the blessing that you could be to the majority
Yeah.
in order to save the feelings of the minority. At the end of the day, most people aren't going to go dark, resentful psycho mode on you. It's
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
a few, it's going to be a loud minority of people that are going to do that when you're a
Yeah.
leader. And so at the end of the day, it costs too much to care too much about how they feel.
That's a good way
to
to say it.
bend yourself backwards to
Yeah.
make sure that they're comfortable, that you're not going to hurt their feelings
Right.
by shining too bright in front of them. Forget about that, because shining bright is the reason why I'm here. Jesus says, "You are the light of the world, a city that is set on a hill that cannot be hidden. Therefore, do your good works, that people might see your good works, and let your light shine, so that you can glorify your Father in heaven."
Yeah.
So literally the point of my life is to shine the attributes of God. That's going to make people uncomfortable. It even says in John chapter 1, Jesus, who is the Word, he's called the light who gives light to all men. And then it says, but men hate the light and love the darkness, lest their deeds be exposed.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, light will expose the darkness. Jesus was controversial. The masses followed him. And you got this minority of resentful religious teachers
Yeah.
who eventually crucify him because they were louder than the majority.
Wow.
And they swayed the crowd.
Yeah.
You know, when Jesus walked in on that donkey, everyone was going, "Hosanna, Hosanna." You know, everyone was bowing down.
Yeah.
But that resentful minority was the ones who eventually they start casting false accusations. They sway the crowd.
Yeah. No, I think what you're saying is profound. I think something you reminded me of is if you are, there's a lot of young men that are listening to this, and I think, Austin and I have a heart for leveling up. Like, we want to continually get better. We want to grow. We want to expand our gifts. But the thing is, when you begin to expand and you begin to become better and you begin to become more free, when you begin to actually grow in your relationship with God, it provokes people around you, because when they encounter you, you're not the same person anymore. And just like you're sharing about Jesus going back to Nazareth, and people are like, you're the carpenter. You're not the son of God. You're the carpenter from this family. Like they instantly want to put him back into this kind of box, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's what people want to do with us, is when we are growing and we're actually yielded to the Lord and God's doing amazing things in our hearts, people want to say, you're not that kind of person. I remember right when I was saved, people were like very confused, because I used to be, addicted to smoking pot, drinking every day, girls. And so people would automatically place me back in that box with those labels. Like, you're not a Christian, you're this kind of guy, right?
Wow.
Just like Saul, he gets radically saved on the road to Damascus. Bam, life completely changed. But then people are afraid of him still, because, okay, this is who Saul was. This is who Saul is, right? And so they have good reason for that. But often society wants to hold us back. People want to hold us back. And when we begin to grow and experience freedom in Christ, and we begin to expand in our relationship with God, it provokes people, because they have a couple of choices. Either they can get jealous and they can kind of complain about you, or they can actually honor what God's doing in your life and then grow themselves, right? And so it's just an interesting thing to think about. But just to change subjects a little bit, I know we got to wrap this up soon, but I want to talk about how do we deal with comparing ourselves to one another now. So we've talked about, when people compare themselves with us, this is how we react.
Yep.
But now, how do we deal with when we feel like we want to compare ourselves with one another? And if you don't mind, can I share a story to start off with?
Yeah. You do this extremely well. Because one thing I notice about you is when you go to build me up, for example, you'll tell me things that you admire about me that you would want to add to your toolkit. When I'm preaching or when I'm leading, you'll go, "Man, I saw how you did that, and I really admire that, and I want to do that more." You do that for me.
I appreciate
And that inspired me. So now I admire that in you. I added that to my toolbox, and I go, I'm going to start doing that. So now what has helped is this. In order to not become resentful towards others, what I'll do is I'll go up to them and I'll go, "Hey, brother, I just want you to know, I really admire this about you, and I want to do it more."
Yeah.
And so in my voice memos or in my text messages, when I'm appreciating something about somebody else, first of all, that really helps. But second of all, that has been a big blessing both to me and to others, because all of a sudden now there's a trust that develops.
Yeah.
Because that, when you did that for me, that made me trust you a lot more. I go, oh, this guy legitimate. He's not comparing himself to me. He's not ever going to become resentful if he notices that I excel at one thing or another, or if I did something while I was speaking and it was effective. You go, I really liked that. I'm going to start doing that instead of, it wasn't that great. You know, like,
totally.
You know what I mean? And so then I'm like,
yeah.
okay, well, I'm going to do the same for you, and I'm going to do the same for others. So you actually inspired a big part of the culture at Citadel, and you inspired me big time to start doing that for others. So I really appreciate that about you. But yeah, so literally just getting down on my knees and sharing what I appreciate about somebody before God and then before them.
Yeah.
I think that's transformative. At the end of the day, I heard a pastor say this: the antidote to resentfulness is gratitude, because you cannot be bitter and grateful at the same time.
Wow.
They run in opposite directions. Gratitude says, "Look at the way the universe is.
Yeah.
God is good."
Yeah.
Darkness, bitterness, and resentfulness goes, "Look at the way the universe is. God is not just." Because if I was in charge, I would have structured it all differently, and I would have made me taller, and I would have made me a better piano player, and I would have made me a better preacher, and I would have done this and this and this.
Right.
I'm calling God not just. So the antidote is gratitude.
That's so good.
What do you think?
No, I agree. I want to kind of share a story, I guess, where I got this entire method. We got to wrap this up after probably the story here, but when I was in ministry school in first year, I remember having this really good friend, Peyton. He wasn't my friend at the time. He was just part of my group. We had these pastoral groups of like 50, 60 people. And my friend Peyton he had this amazing gift of word of knowledge. So he would stand up during our group times and be like, "Man, do you like people have headaches in this room? I just feel like God's saying people have headaches." And then like 10 people would stand up, and then he would pray, and they'd get completely healed, like on the spot. And he would do that all the time, like everywhere he went. And so initially I was just kind of like, okay, that's a cool gift. But then after a while, what I noticed is I would notice his gifting, like that he had a gift of word of knowledge that God had given him. But I would begin looking at other areas of his life where I was comparing myself to, like, oh, he's got a gift of word of knowledge, but like, hey, I'm better at this. I think I'm more loving. I think I'm a better leader. I'm probably better at this. And then I kind of begin to judge him and find out what is he not good at, so I can justify why is he better than me. Yep. Because I think there was this is just me being really honest, but I think there was this deep part of me that was like, God, I have been so devoted to you. I'm hungry after you. Like, I've been giving everything to grow for you. Like, how can somebody close to my age be further along than me when I've been giving everything to become everything you call me to be, right? And so long story short, we were out evangelizing one time, and I wasn't a part of his group there, but I was in the same area, and he goes up to this guy who's on his porch, and this guy's sketchy-looking dude, kind of a sketchy house, and my friend Peyton walks up boldly, and he's like, "Hey, man, I just feel like God's been speaking to me about your knees." And the guy's like, "Okay, like, what do you want to say about my knees, man? Like, this is kind of weird." And he says, "Man, I just feel like God is speaking to me that when you were younger, you were in a skateboarding accident and you broke both your knees. You haven't been able to skateboard since from the surgery. Wow. And it's just really like discouraged you for a long time." And he's like, does that make any sense?" And the guy just looks at him, and not a Christian. He's like, "What the bleepity bleep?" He's like, "What are you talking about, man? How do you know that about me?" He begins to lose his mind. He pulls up both of his pant legs, has scars across both of his knees, and he just begins to like freak out. He's like, "Man, I was in a skateboarding accident when I was younger. It's messed up my entire life." And he's just like, wow. He's like mind blown. He's like, "What is happening here?" He's like, "Are you stalking me? Like, what's happening?" And my friend Peyton's like, "No, man. Like, I hear God's voice, and it's not for me to make me look good. It's for God's glory, just to show you that God sees you and He knows you." And so he's flowing in this gift, and he prays for the guy. The guy gets healed. He has knee pain. His knee pain goes away for the first time in like 20 years. Guy gives his life to Christ, starts coming to church, and it's just this powerful testimony. And so I remember him sharing it in our revival group. It's called a revival group. He was sharing that there, and I just remember struggling so hard to not be completely jealous and compare myself with him, because I had just gone out and I was sharing the gospel with a few people, and it had not gone well. Like, the people did not respond well, so I felt kind of like I was judging myself, and I'm judging him. And so all that to say, I remember we were a couple months later, we were at this retreat, and he was up near the front talking to some people, and I just felt the Lord kind of confront me, and I felt Holy Spirit just tap on my shoulder and say, "You need to go repent to your brother for the jealousy you've had in your heart, harboring
yeah.
harboring towards him. And I'm like, dang, okay. So I went up to him and I just said, hey man, Peyton, we've only chatted a couple times, but I want you to know, like, I've been actually jealous of you for the past 6 months, and I felt resentful towards you because of the gift God's given you. And then I felt like the Lord was like, you need to ask for him to pray for you to actually receive the gift he has that you don't have. And so I'm like, and as a guy, it's like the most humbling thing you can do. I'm like, hey, Peyton, can you actually pray for me to receive the gift of word of knowledge? Because I want to flow in word of knowledge. I want to receive words of knowledge for people that only God can know. I want to flow in that. Like, I want to operate in that. And so he's like, dude, for sure. He's like, I love you, man. He's like, I think you're an amazing guy, and I admire this and this about you. So kind. And then he prays for me. And after that, like, I would say within the next month, I began getting words of knowledge for people where I would begin to hear things. And I remember me and my friend were just praying for one another, and I was like, man, I just got an image of you on a bike as a young kid, and I see you falling off the bike and getting like a rock stuck in your head. He's like, no way, man. He's like, look at this. Pulls his hair apart. He has a scar on his head. When I was younger, I was on a dirt road, fell off my bike. I got a rock cut my head right here. And just crazy, like just totally crazy out of the blue. And so I began to actually operate in word of knowledge, but it came from first jealousy, and then repenting and honoring someone's gift that God's given them and asking them to pray for me. And so just to kind of sum that up, like that humility thing of just going to somebody and, admiring that thing about them that you could be jealous about, that's where it all kind of came from. And I think, just like you said, I think gratitude is the antidote for jealousy. You said that essentially, right?
Gratitude is the antidote to jealousy.
Yeah, I think the same thing. Celebration is the antidote for comparison. Like, just to celebrate people, right? Like if you can truly celebrate what's in someone's life and get behind that and honor that, that's something that you can then step into, right?
Dude.
Yeah, so
That's so excellent. I know we're tight on time, but just let me show
No,
one
it's
thing.
good. Yeah, you wrap it up.
Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, bless those that persecute you.
Yeah, come on.
The book of Job ends
Yeah.
after he's lost everything. His children, his family. Now he loses his health. He's covered in these boils. Dogs are licking the wounds. And even his own wife says, just curse God and die.
Yeah.
Can you imagine your own wife telling you, just kill yourself, just give up? Your life is that trashy.
So
you know what I'm
brutal.
saying? Brutal. And then his 3 friends, best friends, show up and they tell him, why would God punish the righteous? In other words, you are suffering so much and all of your kids died and your wife told you to commit suicide and you got so sick because it's your fault, because you did something. And God condemns them and says, you're bad friends. But the book ends like this. In the very last chapter, it says, all those friends that came up to Job and said, it's your fault that your kids died. It's your fault that fire happened and you lost all your property. Wow. It's your fault that your wife told you to kill yourself. It's something that you did. God's punishing you. The book ends with Job getting down on his knees, and it says, when he prayed for his friends, he received double what he lost.
Wow.
So God is willing to bless those who are pure in heart. And that means blessing your enemies and praying for those that persecute you.
Yeah.
And going to those, Jesus says, if your enemy is hungry, give him something to drink.
Yeah. Come on.
If your enemy is hungry, give him some food. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. And in doing so, you will heap coals of fire in his head. In other words, you continue to shine the light even if there is darkness in the hearts of others.
Yeah.
That is the love that transformed the world. And God is perfectly willing to bless those, even materially.
Yeah.
But not necessarily. But even materially. Look at what he does for Job. Only once he completely gives up this desire to one up, to be better than, to climb the hierarchy, and to prove to his friends that he was right. No. All of that is pushed to the wayside. And because of Job's righteousness, he prays to God, God, I pray for my friends.
Wow.
And then God was willing to give him twice what he had before, and his family was twice as big, and he had twice as much stuff. Anyway, my point being, that is the kind of purity of heart that does not allow for jealousy or resentfulness. And those are the people that God blesses what they do. I'm not saying everything's going to be easy, and I'm not saying God's going to make you rich. But what I am saying is this, God certainly will not answer your prayer for a Lamborghini if it's because you want to look cooler than the guy next to you because you're insecure.
Wow.
You must sacrifice that part of yourself, particularly for those of us in ministry, where Paul says to Timothy, the man of God is satisfied with food and clothing, and the love of money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
And those that desire to be rich fall into a trap and set a snare for themselves. So we need to take that part of ourselves that wants to climb the hierarchy for the sake of our own glory, sacrifice it to the Lord,
So
and
good.
go no matter what. Even if my friends are telling me it's your fault that your kid died, I will bless those that persecute me.
That's so good. That's a good place to wrap it up, guys. I think to sum up, it's just really interesting that God sees everything. He sees everything in our hearts, our minds. And so if you're listening to this today and you feel convicted, you feel encouraged, I want to encourage you to go deal with it. You know, if you are comparing yourself to somebody, go and celebrate them and go repent and be honest about your comparison. Say, hey, I've been comparing myself to you for this reason, but because it's actually because you're amazing at this, right? And so, anyways, I hope this encourages you guys. We love you, and let us know if you like this. If you want us to talk more about these kind of subjects and actually really dive into them, we'd love to do that. But yeah, thanks for sharing today, Austin, and being on the podcast. It's been good. It's good.